Welcome to another flight lesson. I'm Lawrence, a real flight instructor from Johannesburg, South Africa, and today's video is for effect of controls of the aircraft that we will be piloting. So this is exercise 4 in a range of 18 exercises. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do so you can be notified when new lessons have been uploaded. So without further ado, let's get started on exercise 4. So first thing, for effective controls, this exercise is basically an introduction to how the aircraft controls and the methods of operation works, as well as how this controls is actually affected during flight. The main purpose of this exercise is to actually see how the controls function. So therefore we've got a primary effect as well as a secondary effect that we are gonna work with. So if you understand the basics and how each control surface is actually working and affected, this will just actually help you that much better in the following exercises to come, as well as in your landings. So this is also why it's one of the crucial parts. So first thing that we are gonna do before any flight is to make sure always everything is safe. So just before I unpause the video, in this part of the exercise, your flight instructor will actually make sure you are in the main general flight training area, and then as well also have done a complete lookout to make sure you are safe before conducting any flight maneuvers or demonstrations. So what we also going to learn from the next exercise is actually how to keep safe at all times, as well as keeping a lookout whilst we're flying and before we're actually doing any maneuvers. So the primary effects that we are going to be looking at, this is our main control columns that we're going to look. So it's basically going to be the aileron situated on the sides, the elevator, as well as our rudder that we're going to be working with. So this is classified as our primary effects. So let's get started. This will also be usually discussed with you in a briefing prior to the flying exercise, and then, as you know, as I said on a previous flying exercise, just make sure you got a lot of, if you put your hand on the dashboard, you got about 4 fingers to the horizon, just to get a proper seating position. Today we're not going to be focusing too much on the seating position or where we are, as we're just going to look at what each control does. So let's get started. So currently we're flying along the coast. We're going to maintain roughly about 7,000 feet to 7,500 feet for these exercises, and we're going to be traveling just between roughly about 80 knots. So first thing that I want you to look at is your control column, or the flight yoke. So the flight yoke, if I turn it to the left, you'll actually see the aircraft start rolling towards the left. If I turn the flight control column to the right, the aircraft is then turned towards, or rolled towards, the right. This is from the your main ailerons work. Basically what you need to understand in this exercise, the down-going aileron actually generates lift, and therefore will actually then lift up the wing, causing you to roll. So if I'm conducting the roll to the left, then your outer wing, the aileron will go down, and then the inner wing, this aileron will actually deflect upwards, causing less lift, and therefore the aircraft either roll left or right. Now this action, rolling the aircraft right or left, is called roll, and this is done round about the longitudinal axis from the aircraft. Now the longitudinal axis is this imaginary line that runs straight from the spinner of the aircraft all the way straight through towards the rear of your aircraft. So this is then the primary effect of the aileron, which causes our aircraft to roll. Next one, we are going to be looking at our elevator. So if you see, if you're going to look more or less here on the control column, if I put pressure by pushing on the control column forward, you will see my nose lower towards the landing gear. When I pull back on the control column, my nose of the aircraft tends to rise towards the canopy of the aircraft. So this movement is called pitch, and this is done around about the lateral axis of the aircraft. Now the lateral axis is that imaginary line going from the wingtip straight through to the other wingtip, and thus causing our aircraft to either pitch up or down from this imaginary line. Moving on to our rudder pedals, located on the bottom of the floor. If I now deflect the left rudder pedal, or let me just change a little bit the view for you guys here so you can have a better view than the ocean, so we can get you sort of perfect. Okay, now what I want you to do is to get like a reference point on the horizon to look at. Now you can try this in your simulator or aircraft. Take your hands off from the control column and throttle, and now just deflect on the left rudder pedal. As you can see, now the nose tends to go towards the left. If I now depress on the right rudder pedal, the aircraft nose tends to move to the right from our main point of reference where we started. Now this left and right movement of the aircraft nose is known as yaw, and this is done around the normal axis, which is also called the vertical axis. So that's just a straight line going right through your aircraft, basically from the sky to the ground. So we're looking at it from a side point of view. That imaginary line will start from the top, just going right through the aircraft, and this is being also controlled by your rudder here at the back, which controls your yaw. So that's the three primary effects. If we now utilize one of the controls, they actually have a secondary effect if we do not add any other inputs. So let's look at the three secondary effects. The first one we are going to be looking at is rolling the aircraft. Now what I want you to do is just keep your eyes on that horizon for now. I'm going to roll the aircraft to the left, and then you're going to see actually after a few seconds the dashboard is going to show like it's almost looking like it's sinking below the horizon. This is just basically the roll that goes into the secondary effect, which is a yaw. So first we take all our feet and everything off from the control columns. We just now keep on the control yoke. We're turning the aircraft to the left. There you can see it actually now starts sinking below the horizon. This is now as it went from a roll into a yaw. Let me demonstrate one to the right. So we're flying straight and level, turning the aircraft towards the right, and there you actually see she starts the yaw and then sinking below the horizon. Perfect. Now we are gonna just yaw the aircraft and see what is gonna happen from here. So let me zoom out a bit so we can see the rudder pedals. Same as before, I want you actually to just grab a reference point on the horizon we can use as reference. And if you're flying a simulator, hands totally off from your control column, we're just gonna make use of our rudder pedals. So first we're going to deflect the left rudder pedal. You're going to see there's initial yaw, but now the one wing has more lift, there is more into the wind, causing a lift effect. Therefore now the roll of the aircraft actually starts. Let's get it back to straight and level. Now we're going to do one to the right, so let's grab a reference point in the horizon. Deflecting now our right rudder pedal. There's the yaw. Now more relative airflow is forced over the wing, causing our aircraft an actual roll, and there the roll starts going. So secondary effect from a yaw is turning your aircraft into a roll. Let's now keep to the basic airspeed and see what actually pitch is going to have an effect on our aircraft. So currently we fly about 2,100 RPM, about 110 knots. So from now, let's pull back on the control column, and now you can see while we are actually pitching the aircraft up towards the canopy, we now have a reduction in aircraft airspeed. When we lower the nose below the horizon towards the landing gear, now we have an increase in RPM. At the same time, you will also find if you in a climb, RPM will tend to decrease, and in a descent your RPM will then tend to increase. So this is what we are going to be working with in climbing and descending exercises. Now moving on to adverse aileron yaw. Adverse aileron yaw, that basically just means it's where an aircraft, if you want to turn it to the right, your aircraft nose tends first to snap the opposite direction, then come back and turn towards the turn that you've actually intended. So to demonstrate it, it's more prominent on lower airspeeds. So I'm going to come back a little bit on the airspeeds, get the aircraft trimmed out, and then I'll show you now what we are going to do now. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to add any rudder inputs. I'm just going to roll the aircraft with my flight yoke to the left. I'm going to do it rapidly, and then what I want you to notice is, let's also again grab a mark on the horizon. You're going to see the aircraft, as we're turning to the left, the nose is going to tend to yaw almost to the right, and then yaw left with to go into the left roll. So let's do adverse aileron yaw to the left. So 1, 2, 3, roll. There the yaw goes up, and now your aircraft yaws in towards the roll. So this is called adverse aileron yaw. I'm going to demonstrate one towards the right for you now. Let's just get the speed a little bit down. Okay, 3, 2, 1, rolling to the right, nose yaws out, and it actually now slides or yaws back into the right turn. So to counteract that, we have then ailerons, called either fries or differential ailerons, to help us counter that you can actually go and read up upon a little bit more. So all that you need to do when you actually see that is going to happen, apply a little bit of rudder. So if we're saying we're going to left, we know it's going to be a rapid turn. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same, but now I'm going to apply a little bit of left rudder. So 3, 2, 1, right turn, a little bit left rudder, and there you can see the aircraft doesn't yaw in or out of the turn. Let's do one to the right. 3, 2, 1, right turn with a bit of rudder, and you can see actually it maintains much more well than without using rudder pedals. So when we get to the turning exercise, we'll demonstrate actually then how to go about and fly. What I want you guys to do is never get into the habit of first applying rudder pedals then turning. Remember, you always start your turn with your control columns and then apply rudder as necessary to keep a balanced turn, and this will get into the turning exercise. So now we're just going to demonstrate a little bit more extra lift devices for you. For this exercise, I'm just going to hide the control column so we can actually have a closer look at the flap lever and get some altitude going as well. Okay, so what I want you to do now is just look again on the end of the horizon. And what I'm going to do, usually when we fly, we lower the flaps in stages, but for this exercise, I'm going to go to full flaps in one go. You can take your hands and feet off complete controls because you want to see what the nose of the aircraft is doing. So now I'm lowering the flaps 10, 20 full, and there you can see actually it raises the nose. This is get it back to normal. So now what we need to do, what I want to demonstrate here is, once we've lowered the flaps, it actually gives us a lower nose down attitude. But look here, I'm not losing any altitude, but it looks like I am actually flying down, which is, or descending, which it actually helps you as well to have a better field of vision when you're coming in for the landing. So we remember the aircraft tended to pitch up. There, if I leave the control column, so now I'm just going to move it back towards retracting the flaps, or flaps up. And now let's leave it with the horizon again. Okay, let's just get you a nice view. Now what we are going to do from this sector, I'm going to trim the aircraft. I'll get to the trimmer now. I want to demonstrate what happens when we are actually rapidly moving the flaps up. So now we've set the flaps, and now we retract the flaps, and now we get a nose down attitude for the initial one. So where this comes into play is for when we are actually coming in for landing. So while we are coming in for the landings, you will then see, as you see now, what happens when you're retracting flap or lowering the flaps. This will then make your aircraft either pitch up or down. So for us to practice is, what are we going to do? So if we retract the flaps to actually keep our nose on the horizon. So if I'm flying on the horizon, I'm going to go 10-degree flaps and push a little bit down, go to 20 degrees and just keep it there on the horizon. So that's practice I want you to do, and then keep it on the horizon, going full flaps in that part. Okay, and then same with retraction, you go to either 30 or 20. So now you see the nose has lowered way too much, and keep it there, and then as the flaps retract, pull back a little bit, going to the up position, keep pulling back, keep pulling back, keep pulling back, and hold it on the horizon. And then also always make sure when you are flying with flaps that you stay within the white arc, and do not use flaps if you are outside the white arc. Like now, if you see you are speeding up and going out of the white arc, then you need to retract your flaps in the up position. Perfect. Okay, so let me just get some altitude here for our next exercises. We are now going towards the trimmer. There's this big wheel right here. So as you've seen, when I lower the flaps, my aircraft actually tends to either pitch up or down, but now I need to hold it in a certain position. Also, like if I'm now climbing the aircraft, if it's a long flight, I can't pull back on the control column or push back the entire time. That's just too much pressure. Also, when we are flying at different altitudes, the atmosphere has different pressures at different altitudes working on our surfaces. So therefore we then have our trimmer that actually almost acts like power steering, if you want to put it in layman's terms. So how the trimmer work is, you put your aircraft nose on the horizon or in which attitude you want. Then you need to hold it in that position. Let's say we wanted actually to fly in this position right here. Now you trim forward if you want a nose down position, or trim back if you want the aircraft nose to actually point raise towards the canopy. The idea is for you is to hold it in that position where you want, and then trim it until you don't feel any pressures on your arm or on the flight control column fighting you. Because flying is about doing everything gentle as possible and being in control of the aircraft. Don't let the aircraft fly you. So one exercise that you can also do is get it trimmed out, take your hands and feet off of the controls, and then just play around with the trimmer. So now I've come back a little bit on the throttle. Now you see the aircraft is actually descending. So now I trim up a little bit, and the trick is small increments of trim. So now I just add a little bit, and there she actually stays. My hands is not on throttle or rudder pedals whatsoever. So there she goes down a little bit, keep it where you need it, and then re-trim as required. So now I'm trimming all the way down. Now you can see the aircraft is actually going towards. So I'm going to trim fully forward, and then you can see where I'm actually holding my control column now, and I'm still actually going down. Now I'm going to trim all the way up, and let's see what is going to happen with my control column's input. Okay, so look there, I'm going up, but I'm actually pushing all the way forward now. I'm still climbing, pushing forward, so that's not trimmed out. So for better flying skills, make sure you actually able to trim a aircraft, and that will also make your life that much easier. Because when it's trimmed, when you get into navigation, flying with especially aircraft that doesn't have autopilot, then you always want to quickly look at your navigation charts as well, and then you want to know your aircraft is at least going the direction you've pointed at. Now, without further ado, let's go to the power quadrants. First thing we're going to be looking at is the throttle. So now look what happens if I'm actually reducing my throttle. My nose lowers towards the landing gear, sinking below the horizon. Now I'm adding full power, and I'm generating more speed. More speed equals more lift, thus raising my nose towards the canopy or above the horizon. Another exercise that you can actually play with is to just use your trimmer and throttle to see if you can actually maintain straight and level without using any controls input from the flight column. Now also, one thing in particular with the throttle, I see a lot of students or people, they tend to use the throttle too aggressively. If it's all the way out and you want to advance it all the way forward, always take 3 seconds in account. So from here we'll go 1, 2, 3. Now we have full throttle. Same with coming reducing the throttle, 1, 2, 3. This is just because, remember, this is a carbureted engine, and if we add fuel too much quickly or take away fuel too quickly, the air that it actually needs to mix that air ratio can therefore be incorrect, and you can actually experience a engine failure in that case. So always work very gentle with the control column. So if it's halfway, then you know it's about 1.5 seconds, so 1.5, and you're in. So just try and get a little bit more using the throttle much more gentle that part. Now we're going towards the mixture. Now the mixture, that's, as I explained, giving you the main flow for your carburetors, and then we looking for how much throttle power we want out of it with the throttle. So the mixture, when it's all the way advanced, we call this full reach. When we reduce the mixture, we are leaning the mixture. Now when flying at altitudes, you want to get it to about 2,300 RPM setting. Again, like with the startup checks, you are then going to start reducing your mixture. You're going to look for where the needle is at its highest point or the peak. Then you're going to start getting a drop, and you know you went too far, then you go back to that highest point and then give it 3 nice turns towards the right to reach the mixture, and this will then actually put you on the correct air to fuel ratio. Now for every 1,000 feet that you are climbing, you need to then give turn these red knob or the mixture, give it 1 turn to the left or just a little bit out, so you can actually then lean the mixture, because remember, the higher we go, less air, so we also then need to put less air into our system. When we are descending, this is now when it becomes very important to remember. When we climbed, we were actually leaning the mixture, meaning taking away fuel. So every 1,000 feet that we descend, we now need to add or richen the mixture to keep up with our RPM. Also, we'll look a little bit when we get to the exercises to how to work temperatures as well with your mixture control. So that is the mixture. Then aircraft that has carburetors, on the right you're going to have that carby that looks almost like this button right here. It's also just a pull out type as your throttle, but it's just a little bit smaller, almost looking like this radio panel like they have here. When you actually pull out the carburetor, we call this carburetor heat hot. So this now just allows hot air to flow through your carburetor taken from the exhaust. Now if we push it back in, when it's in the off position, we call this carb heat cold. So just familiarize yourself with that, as we are going to use that in the climbing and descending exercises. So once that is done, I think we've covered everything from here. Now the last thing that they're going to train you on your actual exercise or go through to is the recover from a spiral dive. What happens is, because you are a new student, you tend to look much more inside of your aircraft than actually flying visual flight rules VFR, which is meant for outside. What's happening is, if you are looking inside, your aircraft can go into a steady roll either to the left or the right, where it actually goes unnoticed because you are concentrating so hard inside the aircraft. What happens is actually starts going into a roll and a dive, which I'm going to demonstrate now. Then your airspeed tends to increase, and we do not want to actually rush ourselves towards the ground. So what are we going to do in this instance? The first thing, we are then going to reduce the power to idle, so our speed doesn't run away. We are then going to turn our wings level. We're going to gently ease out of the dive, because remember, the faster we go and the more pressure we put on the control column, that's more G load we put on our wings, and we do not want to snap the wings off or actually snap the wings off or cause any structural damage. Once we are out of the dive, we will then get back to a straight and level attitude, and therefore apply power as required. So let's demonstrate from this part. So typically what happens, the student will be looking inside the cockpit. Aircraft will start gently going towards the left or right. This exercise will go to the left, and the nose will also start lowering. Now you can see your airspeed starts increasing. You start going, and look at that bank angle. So now the student looks up, and I'm in that dive. So first thing, immediately power towards idle, roll your wings level. If the airspeed is high, now gently raise the nose for your four-finger attitude with the horizon. Then wait for your speed to come back to a cruising speed, and then you can add power as required, and this will then bring you out of a spiral dive. Fantastic. So that is our effect of controls for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe so when I've uploaded the next video you will be notified. Next exercise is going to be flying straight and level, and if there is any questions, please comment below, then I can either talk a little bit before each flight or answer questions, or just make an entire video on your questions. See you for the next training lessons, and have a lucky day. Keep well.